All right, check the mic. After dark, we're live here. Steelers get the win over the Giants, 26-18. We already have people in the chat waiting for your annoying TJ Watt rant. So go ahead, just start with it. How does he do it? How is he the best closer in football?
Yeah, it is pretty remarkable. I mean, I have no earthly idea how he manages to time not just like winning plays, but like perfect, trifecta pass rushing plays. The strip, sack, fumble, recovery for critical situations so regularly. It's amazing. Like nobody else can do that. Chris Jones comes close. Like we've talked about that before. Chris Jones' ability to time up those plays. And but that's it. It's Chris Jones and it's TJ Watt. No other pass rusher is able to dial those up when they matter.
Yeah, Watt with the incredible strip sack. I mean, it didn't completely finish the game, but that offset what Russell Wilson's fumble, which gave the Giants that last opportunity. The Giants still had that one final opportunity here, but the Beanie Bishop interception. I thought overall Daniel Jones was a funny game because I thought he made some pretty good throws down the field. He had a beautiful seam pass to Theo Johnson on that game-winning drive to help put them in position. But then he's in a somewhat pressured pocket at the end there. It kind of panics, overthrows Devin Singletary for the easy interception. That's a rough finish for the Giants, where, again, I thought Daniel Jones overall did some nice things. Troy Aikman can't stand him, but I thought overall he was pretty good. Troy hates Daniel Jones more than he hates analytics. He was like, man, come on, what are you doing? Back slowing down your receivers.
That 2-point play, or like running the goofy looking Indianapolis Colts style 2-point play, that set back the acceptance of analytics by Joe Buck and Troy Aikman by about 10 to 15 years. That one play means it's going to be 2038 by the time either of those guys are willing to accept that the numbers say this is a smart decision.
It's just funny. Like they still sound surprised by it every week. Like, oh, the analytics says that. Like, you guys were literally on the call last year when the Titans somehow beat the Dolphins by doing that, by going for too early and then winning it. Like, you were right there. And it's the same, Twitter becomes kind of like the same thing. Like, I don't understand this. Why do they do this? Why do they, and it's increasing win probability just a little bit, that's all it is.
Troy even explained it. Like, he understands it. He just still thinks it's goofy. Like, it's like the Kurt Warner stuff we were talking about the other week, where they're like, I don't even understand what this silliness is. Like, they do. They just, it's bizarre. It's bizarre behavior.
So the game started out, it was a more interesting game than I had anticipated. 9 straight, was it 6 straight field goals to kick it off, back and forth. It was 9-9 at one point. Then you get the punt.
But it was it was a game of disallowed touchdowns. Like everyone was scoring touchdowns at the start of the game, but none of them were counting. They were either getting taken off by penalties, they were getting taken off because of only 1 foot down, because of 1 foot down twice. We found every creative way possible of taking a touchdown off the board. So we end up with this game that was going up incrementally in field goals.
Yes, that's exactly what it was until you got the Calvin Austin punt return for a touchdown. You hit Russell Wilson hitting Calvin Austin with a beautiful touchdown, hits George Pickens with a beautiful deep ball. I think I don't know what it looks like throw for throw at the end of the day because the fumble hurts at the end, I think, for Russ. But I thought those 2 deep balls, the other one to Van Jefferson that he hit, a little underthrown, more Van Jefferson. But, man, 2 absolute dimes, one for the touchdown to Calvin Austin, one that George Pickens won. Better than anything we saw last week, I would say, from Russ.
The Pickens one was spectacular. That was an incredible throw. And it wasn't his usual deep ball style with the arc, the moon ball that Chris Collinsworth talks about all the time. This one was put in on a rope, like it was fired in there into a pretty tight window. That was an amazing play. And I was texting you. Russell Wilson looks a little bit more dynamic and elusive than he has in the last couple of years. Like, he looks a little bit more sprightly and able to avoid the rush a bit more. The other thing, I'm going to make a case now. I don't think that he should be downgraded. Now, it's not our call anymore. I don't think he should be downgraded for the fumble. I think when you're punched in the face before they get the ball, it's not on you. If you're punched in the head, you should get a break on that.
Wasn't it Justin Fields last year? Somebody went for I think it was someone on the Chiefs went for the peanut punch and just completely missed and just like nailed him in the face. Like, I'm waiting for those. We don't see too many of those misses. Like you keep saying every week they're really good at hitting, but every now and again you punch a guy in the face on your way to the ball. That should be a
TJ
penalty,
Watt.
right?
TJ Watt did that to somebody a year or two ago. He just like ran up, jumped in the air, and like lamped him in the head, like missing, the shot that he was going for. I can't even remember what he was aiming for. Yeah, I look, it's really hard to spot that real time, but like it's a fumble, so it should be getting reviewed anyway. I do feel like at the point where you look at that in slow-mo and go, oh, he actually cracked him in the face before he got the ball. That's technically a penalty, right?
Yeah. I mean, slow-mo is not going to do that. We're not going to get that from slow-mo. Some questions about why Russell, he does look a little better, I think, in the pocket. Now, as soon as you said that to me, he got sacked, but that was like the play where Dexter Lawrence broke through two
ran through the entire blocking
Brian
scheme.
Burns. That was all Dexter Lawrence setting up a sack for my guy Brian Burns. But yeah, I think overall he looks a little bit better. That was part of the issue with Denver. It was like, okay, there's Nathaniel Hackett. Maybe there's a disconnect between him and Sean Payton, but at the same time, it was like, every now and again he would flash those special plays. Remember that pass to Cortland Sutton that he had on Monday Night Football last year against the Bills? Like every now and again he would show Russ those special outside the pocket plays. But overall, you would say, hey, he's definitely a step slower, right? There's less magic in those legs. And I'm not saying it's completely back, but it does look a tick better, I would say. And if he didn't fumble at the end, we'd be probably raving about the entire game. And look, I still think he's throwing the ball pretty well. And here's the deal, Sam. At the very least, I know they settled for a bunch of field goals. It was quirky stuff. The George Pickens one I still thought was a touchdown. But
but it wasn't.
Like, same foot in. I thought same foot counted. I thought it was not. We all seem to think that. Yeah. But the ceiling of the Steelers offense, like we said last week, the ceiling of the Steelers offense is much higher with Russ under center compared to Fields.
Oh, I would be a lot more excited as a Steelers fan coming out of this game than I was last week. Like, this was a better version of Russell Wilson than a week ago. A week ago, we got all the hype because of a couple of George Pickens special plays where he bailed out underthrown deep balls. And we were saying, look, credit him for putting the ball in the air and taking a shot at that, but most of that was Pickens. This week was a lot different. Like, this was Russell Wilson doing his share of the heavy lifting. And okay, his PFF grade might not reflect that because they might ding him for that fumble at the end. And, but he looked, this was a lot better. Like, this, I think, significantly raised the ceiling of the Steelers offense, even relative to last week. This version of Russell Wilson. Now, look, caveat, Giants defense, not great. But this version of Russell Wilson and that defense, George Pickens, the run game that they were able to establish, this version of the Steelers is not to be messed with.
I love that. Their front four, so Alex Highsmith's back the last couple of weeks, when they have Alex Highsmith, TJ Watt on the edges, Keanu Benton, and then Cam Hayward on the interior, that might be the best pure pass rushing front four in the NFL. Just as far as, hey, when that four is out there, best in the NFL, it's up there. Highsmith had some big plays. Benton's been, Hayward's been really good. Benton's been really good as a second-year player getting after the QB. So I think they just, they have a lot. They gave it up a little bit to the Giants. I think, Giants hung tough. Tyrone Tracy ran the ball extremely well. Came out so late with potential concussion. I know you love Tracy during draft time, and he just looks like he's getting better and better every week.
He really is. He's so good. Like, when you consider how young he is at the running back position, every time he's on, they talk about him being a former wide receiver. He really hasn't played running back that much. And you could see it on his college tape. Like, he didn't know what he was doing a lot of the time, but he's so athletically talented. He's able to make it work. He's getting a better idea of what he's doing now. And I really think the sky's the limit for that guy.
And as someone in the chat mentions, Nick Herbig coming back as well. The great Nick Herbig. And Herbig looked fantastic before he got hurt. So yeah, Steelers, they're in really good shape right now, Sam. They're sitting here at 6-2. Giants fall to 2-6. I know people are asking, hey, are we going to predict that the Steelers are all by themselves in first place in the NFC North? They haven't played the Ravens yet. And I think if you ask both of us in a vacuum, who's a better team, Ravens or the Steelers, I think we'd both probably pick the Ravens, but it's a lot closer. It's certainly a lot closer now than I would have said even just a couple weeks ago. Now that after the Ravens lost to the Browns yesterday.
I mean, even just this game, like this game, I think genuinely changes their potential. Like I think up until this week, I would have said Baltimore clearly has a higher ceiling. Whatever about where they would, finish overall, I would say Baltimore on their best is significantly better than Pittsburgh on their best. This version of Russell Wilson, though, like this version of the offense and the Steelers generally, that got a lot closer, I think, to Baltimore. So I'm not willing to say they will finish first, but it's not out of the question.
You want to discuss the 2-point play?
Okay.
Is that up there with like Pat McAfee lore or what? I mean, that was pretty special. But it's just funny when you set something up, right? You set up the swinging gate, you set up this trick play, and no one blocked.
So the McAfee one, like the famous Colts play, right? That famously was never supposed to be run, right? It was never supposed to be snapped. Like that was part of the thing, is that they snapped the ball basically by mistake, and the play was never supposed to. This was set up to work. It's just that nobody was paying attention when they snapped the ball. So Highsmith just like ran forward and tackled the receiver. They had like a wall in front of him with one or two guys in the way. If everyone had just... Yeah. Now, part of the problem is, where are you trying to do this, right? You're on the road in a noisy stadium, and you need an entire offensive line to now be looking in at the snap because they're not where they normally are. So this comes back to this, like, Troy and Joe are busy, looking down their noses and sneering at the idea of analytics telling you to go for it. And as we keep repeating, like, the problem is not the decision to go for it. The problem is, once you've made the call to go for it, what are you dialing up to do to make that happen? And the Giants decided to dial up a play that involved a bunch of blockers moving out to somewhere that they're not used to, and now having to deal with a snap count that they can't hear on the road in a noisy environment at a key point. Like, that's just inherently kind of dumb, right? So the play got blown to hell, not because the analytics is a flawed concept, because the play call was silly.
Yeah, I mean, as I've said before on the show, Sam, the first team that bottles up all the best 4th and 1 plays and the 2-point conversions, the first team that can bottle them up and have a higher success rate will have a massive advantage. But again, that's like just saying, hey, we're going to rush with our front four and get pressure all the time. Right. That's a hope, not a strategy.
And to be clear, I don't think that that's a bad play design. I think it's a bad call to do it on the road in a hostile environment where the noise is through the roof because you just scored a touchdown and it's a 2-point conversion, right? If they'd run that at home, I think they score and it's a good call. Running it on the road is silly.
All right, we got some important chat stuff to get to. First, I got to reference Matt M here, giving a shout out to North Andover, Massachusetts, one of the towns right next to me. That Jake Bobo is from there, and Pat Fryermuth went to Brooks there, went to one of the schools there. So shout out to North Andover, not as cool as North Reading. We have someone asking about the Steelers. Brett Knight Music asking about trading for a wide receiver. I know some people had brought up Darius Slayton. He had a couple big plays in this game for the Giants. Would he be a good fit? I mean, every time I thought that, I'm thinking, it seemed like Van Jefferson would come back and make a big play. Van Jefferson's had nice games at points in his career, but not enough that I really trust him as a number 2. He did have 4 catches for 62 and a really nice adjustment on that 36-yarder from Russ. Do you think the Steelers should go get a receiver?
I mean, they have been consistently interested in one for an extended period of time, right? So it does kind of lead you to believe that they're in the market if one materializes. Now, will one materialize? I mean, we're running out of time. Amari Cooper's already gone. Obviously they wanted either Brandon Ayuk or Deebo Samuel at one point. Those guys are not on the market at the moment. DeAndre Hopkins been traded. Like the potential guys.
Maybe the Jets are sellers. Devontae Adams.
Yeah.
How about let me just make something up here. What about Tyler Lockett from the Seahawks? Would you reunite Tyler Lockett with Russ if you could? I don't even know the mechanics of the contract. I haven't looked into it. I'm just bringing it up. DK is supposed to come back this week. and they have Jackson Smith and Jigba. I keep wanting to bump him up the depth chart, and they have Jake Bobo. So even though the Seahawks are very much in contention, would they do that? I don't know.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't. I think he's sort of on the downswing of his career at this point. I'm not sure it's that big of a difference to the Steelers. I'm also not sure what it would cost. So I doubt it. I honestly think, look, George Pickens is an elite receiver. Calvin Austin is a playmaker if you get him the ball. Van Jefferson, inconsistent and who knows. But you add those guys to the tight ends they've gotten, Freiermuth and Darnell Washington, Connor Hayward in his kind of H-back role. I think they have weapons. Like, I don't know that they need one of those guys if they could find one. I mean, maybe Deontay Johnson back to Pittsburgh, as Sean in the chat says, would be pretty funny. I mean, that's the kind of player that they could use, and they traded him away.
And Drake Holiday wants to know if we thought that I was roughing the punter on Calvin Austin's punt return. I have to admit, at first I thought it was. So there was a flag immediately. I thought it was. But, my head just turns away for the special teams play. I didn't see if he was blocked in the back. They claimed maybe he was blocked a little bit. Clearly he roughed the punter, but, they were acknowledging, I think, that it was blocked into the punter rather than roughing him.
Right. I'm taking your word for it as the resident special teams expert on the show.
Oh, so you saw less of this play than I did. Good. That's good.
I watched the return. I wasn't paying attention to how it got into his hands.
Yeah, honestly, the whole time I was sitting there next to Harry, and Harry's like going nuts, and I'm just like, oh, no, son, don't get too excited. There's a flag immediately, and I assumed it was roughing. I thought it was coming back. So my camera's just going to keep moving. Now that I have the software.
You got to give it the jazz hands again. Shut it up. That's the thing. If the jazz hands makes it track you. Have you not learned from my experience of the thing?
I didn't use jet. So now I'm out. Is it
you
off
made
now?
A gesture. You did something while you were talking with your hands, and it made it start tracking you. This is the problem now with this camera.
At least it's not showing like my secret spreadsheets or anything like that today. So that's good. What else we got here?
I going to say before we got out to your camera woes. At least it's working this time. It's not cutting out.
Doesn't cut out yet. Yeah. What is this? Monday Night Football World Series. Oh yeah, what a week for New York. So is this game over? Yeah. So Dodgers win. It's 3-0, Sam. Wow. It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate for the Yankees. Giants lose tonight, and the Jets are coming back here on Thursday night against the Texans. What a week for New York.
What did you make of Deontay Banks getting benched for getting hurdled?
That wasn't just for getting hurdled. There was stuff going on the last couple of weeks with Banks.
But the hurdle. So they'd already called him out for basically not giving 100% effort or whatever, and then he gets hurdled, and they're like, "All right, now you're just taking the piss. Sit down." I feel like that's pretty harsh.
People get hurdled all the time.
And that was a high hurdle. Like he didn't.
Yes,
he wasn't
Najee's
going.
been hurdling people since college, man. I mean, he is. I thought last year he ran hard at times. It didn't always show up in the stats. I mean, he looks really good this season. Again, even earlier this year, I thought he was running hard, running better than he had in a while. Wasn't showing up in the stats. Last 3 weeks, though, it has 6 yards per carry for Najee Harris. You get hurdled by Najee, who's feeling it right now.
And look, I am the first to complain that NFL defenders' tackling technique is atrocious. And from that perspective, like he launched himself. But he launched himself in like the standard cornerback tackling technique on a big man, right? So I don't know that you can blame him for that. You want Deontay Banks to try and tackle Najee Harris up high. No. He's outweighed by like 50 pounds. That's not going to go well. So no. I feel like Deontay Banks has gotten hosed there. I think he's suffered an injustice, and I think it's only right we call attention to it.
Give Giants fans hope. The only hope I'm going to give Giants fans, Jets fans, or the Jags fans, I think, for maybe the next few weeks is you could hire me as general manager. I will trade down. I will load up with 12 to 14 draft picks in every draft, and I'll get the roster back on track. As I said last week, though, I might not make the best quarterback decision. Don't judge me by that, though. I'll do the rest of the stuff, but I'll get the roster back in shape at least, so for when we stumble into a quarterback.
I mean, look,
we have one in Jacksonville.
The hope for the Giants is this was not as bad a game as I expected it to be. I mean, they were able to execute a viable offense. I thought coming into
Honestly,
this game, they had no shot of blocking the Steelers, and they were going to be like last week where it didn't function at all. They actually blocked them up pretty well for most of the game. Right at the like the TJ Watt thing, because he had the sacks, it's going to be like, he was destroying them all game. He actually didn't have that big an impact overall. Like Highsmith was frequency wise was a far bigger problem than TJ Watt was. I thought TJ Watt on his own was going to be the reason that the Giants weren't going to be able to execute an offense at all in this game. So for them to have like points on the board, moving the ball, Danny Dimes playing okay, and outside of some bad plays in the pocket, which is just par for the course. I mean, this was not a terrible performance from a Giants team that shouldn't have been in this game.
isn't that the story of the Giants season, though? I feel like last week was awful against the Eagles. Maybe my expectations are so low for this team, though, but they surprised me by only losing to Dallas by 5, which looks worse. Now, the more we know about Dallas, they surprised me by going into Seattle and winning 29-20 with the blocked field goal for a touchdown to finish it. They surprised me by being in, close games with the Bengals. And, it was really just the Eagles. As I'm looking at their schedule, they got beat up pretty bad in week 1 against the Vikings. And they got beat up pretty bad in week 7 against the Eagles, but they've been in every other game. And I don't know, maybe my expectations were just so low, but they've been a little bit.
By the way, to clear up the misinformation that's just flowing through the chat, I am not claiming that TJ Watt wasn't better than Alex Highsmith. I'm saying
backhanded compliments for TJ here.
On a frequency basis, Highsmith was affecting the quarterback more often.
Every game. Is every game. TJ Watt's sitting there with one pressure, and then he finishes it with a strip sack.
Stop it! Which in large part happened because TJ Watt was the guy getting all the extra attention, right? So they were not working with equal opportunities. Number one, Highsmith was going against the worst player at left tackle. Number two, he was the guy getting single attention all the time because TJ Watt was getting the extra attention. Consequently, Highsmith affected the quarterback on more plays. And then even with that, TJ Watt was the guy that made the more impactful plays with the, it's time to get a strip sack fumble because we just fumbled the ball away. I got to go get it back.
We good?
Yeah.
I just started screaming on mute because you told me to shut up, basically.
That works.
Who's the guest? We don't have a guest on Wednesday this week. Are we doing mid-season awards?
We are. We're doing a mid-season award show. So no guests. No time for a guest.
No time for guests. I want to get Matt Harmon on. I'm trying to get Matt Harmon. We got to talk to him about it. Matt Harmon, reception perception. I think he's got some interesting takes on the rookie. I mean, all receivers generally. So we'll see if we can get him. Any other suggestions for guests in the coming weeks? I do have for the draft show this week. I will have Rick Spielman back. He had so much fun with us last week that he wanted to do the draft show with me. So we'll be doing that as well.
Yeah, we got a ton of guests we got to get to.
We've got Texans Jets on Thursday night. Oh, a collaboration with Coleman. Yeah, do you think we can piggyback off of some of Coleman's YouTube success? Maybe sneak into one of his videos, get some of those followers. Because we're just a startup, Sam.
We've got so many people that we want to get to. Coleman, we need to heed the call guys. We still want to do something with those guys. We still have to get that arranged. It's getting the schedules to align is still a work in progress.
Ben Solak is too big time now. He's over at ESPN doing ESPN shows. There's no way Ben Solak will do our show. There's no way. We're just multiple year, 2-time podcast of the year nominees and everything, but I don't know if he'll have time for us. I don't know if he'll have time. Ooh, Trevor and Connor with a draft episode. Maybe I could do that. Get those guys on there.
I'm going to pass on Michael Lombardi, though.
I am dying to have Michael Lombardi on the show.
No.
I would love. I think you would turtle up. I don't think you would challenge him.
I would, before we had the show, I would go and find the clip from the Cleveland Browns of Football Life and find the segment of Bill Belichick teaching him how to write his own reports. and play that to him.
I would love to have a good conversation between you and Michael Lombardi.
There's not a possibility that could happen.
That would be fantastic. Greg Cosell. Yeah, definitely. We'll have. Oh yeah, I forgot. We got Greg too for draft. We have access to Greg, of course. 33rd team guy over here. I'll see if Nick Saban wants to join. We can grab Nick at some point. Sure.
Yeah.
Do you want to touch on the Kansas City Chiefs trade for Josh Uche while we're here?
I mean, it's a 2026 sixth. Is that right? It's like
that's correct.
It's a sixth a year in advance. And remember, he signed a contract for like $7 in the offseason. We were like, how have the Patriots re-signed him for that absolute nonsense sum of money? So the Chiefs have paid him nothing in salary and nothing to get him, and he's a talented pass rusher. I mean, the default position tends to be, oh, how did Kansas City do this every time they make a move? But honestly, that's a steal. That's like a ridiculous move.
Yeah, he's always been a one-dimensional player. He's a pass rush specialist, so he doesn't have to play the run. You rush him 15, 20 times a game. And I keep mentioning Kansas City's defensive front, different body types, right? Their ability to move Chris Jones around when they want to. I mean, he's pass rush win rates. It was 19% 2 years ago. That's really high. It was down to 12% last year. It's back up to 19.8 this year for Uche when he's been out there. It was 18 his first year. Anything over 17, 18 for an edge rusher is really good when you're creeping into the 20s. That's what he does. So I think he'll, just add another pass rush presence for the Chiefs for a 2026 sixth rounder. It's not like they're mortgaging the future for these things. So,
and virtually no money. Like it couldn't be like a lower deal for them. Like it's hard to cost them anything, and it clearly upgrades them.
All right, guys. Appreciate everybody joining in. As always, check the mic after dark. So we got Wednesday show. We'll be doing midseason